Hello, and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Entertainment Network. I am your host, Sarah. It is Tuesday. I am delighted to be with you, as always, to bring you another interview with another great author. As we get started, I do want to remind you, as I always do, to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. As I always say, and it is true, it really helps the algorithm, it gets this podcast out to more readers like yourselves, and that is greatly appreciated. All of your support is always greatly appreciated. In fact, if you would like to support the podcast and the network as a whole in a monetary fashion, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.info. There you can leave a tip or a donation. If you would like to as well, when you're there, you can leave a question or a comment. I am always happy to engage with questions and comments. I don't know what you want to ask me, but if there's something that you would like to know, I'd be happy to try to answer that question for you. Depends on what it is. I may or may not know the answer, but ask away, and I'm happy to engage with said questions and comments. But again, that link is gsmcpodcast.info. You see it next to me. You'll see it scrolling throughout the episode. Thank you, as always, for all the support that you give this podcast, no matter what form that support takes. Again, happy Tuesday. I hope your week is going well. I had a friend text me earlier, and she said she was over this week and it's only Tuesday. And I was feeling the same way earlier today. Just, it's been a long week. People were saying that about January, that January felt like it lasted several years. And this week feels like it's lasted several weeks already. Nothing really bad. I mean, I got a migraine over the weekend, and that's never fun. And it's not the worst migraine I've ever had, but it keeps mostly going away and then coming back, and then kind of going away and then coming back. So it's one of those recurring migraines that is better than when they just stick around for days at a time, but still never pleasant. And then just, dogs. they're good. Mostly they're good, but hubby hasn't been feeling well. I haven't been feeling well. Dogs have been dogging. Puppy has definitely been puppying. He's getting the hang of the potty training thing. That's great. He's got other issues, but he's sweet, and what can I say? He makes me smile, and he's overall a very, oh look, there he is in the background. He's overall a very good puppy, and I'm grateful that he is learning and growing in many levels. But he does puppy a lot. He apparently wants to go back in the bedroom. He didn't want to be in the bedroom. Now he wants to be back in the bedroom. So we'll figure that out here in a minute. Let's talk about a book. I have a returning author with me today. Author Yasmin Angoe is back. When she was here the first time, we talked about the third book in a trilogy that she had just finished writing, obviously, since it was the third book in a trilogy. Today, we're talking about a standalone novel, Not What She Seems. Let me give you the description of the book. After years of self-exile, Jacinda Jack Brodie is back in Brook Haven, South Carolina. But the small cliffside town no longer feels like home. Jack hasn't been there since the beloved chief of police fell to his death, and all the whispers said she was to blame. The chief was Jack's father. Racked with guilt, Jack left town with no plans to return. But when her granddad lands in the hospital, she rushes back to her family, bracing herself to confront the past. Brook Haven feels different now. Wealthy newcomer Faye Arden has transformed the notorious Moor Manor into a quaint country inn. Jack's convinced something sinister lurks beneath Faye's perfect exterior, yet the whole town fawns over their charismatic new benefactor. And when Jack discovers one of her granddad's prized possessions in Faye's office, she knows she has to be right. But as Jack continues to dig, she stumbles upon dangerous truths that hit too close to home. With not only her life, but also her family's safety on the line, Jack discovers that maybe some secrets are better left buried. Again, that is the description of Not What She Seems, and yeah, maybe some secrets are better left buried. There's a lot going on in that description, and that gives you a good overview, but there is even more going on than that in this story. There are lots of secrets that get uncovered, and a lot of twists and turns. It's suspense. It's got a little bit of a psychological element to it, and it's got just kind of I mean, families and the way families communicate, but the way those families communicate and how that can be detrimental to the mental health of a family and the health overall of a family. Small towns can be a lot like a family, and they can affect how we interact with the world. That those relationships have a big effect on how we interact with the world, how the small town sees us. We're going to talk about that. There's a lot going on, and Jack is a she's a compelling character, but she's definitely a flawed protagonist, which is great because we get to watch her struggle with a lot of different things. I mean, even the way the book starts out with Jack's character, I mean, you got a bit of her story from that description of the book, but just the way we meet Jack, there's so much going on, and she definitely has made some questionable choices, but she's also made choices within the confines of how people see her, how she sees herself because of how her family sees her, how the town sees her, etc. So lots of layers in this book, and yeah, really well put together. It was fun having Yasmin on last time to talk to her. I was coming in on the third book of a trilogy, though, so it's a little different when you start reading in the third book of a trilogy. This one was a lot of fun simply because I got to start at the beginning and read it all the way through. So, you get the whole story in a standalone, obviously. But I think Yasmin is a lot of fun, and I hope that you enjoy the interview. Let's do that now. Again, the book is called Not What She Seems. The author is Yasmin Angoe. Hello, Yasmin, and welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again, Sarah.
I'm happy to have you back, and it's lovely to actually see you this time. So thank you for being a video podcast now. But we are going to talk about your standalone book. But before we do that, maybe a refresher for people who saw the first one, or maybe people are meeting you for the first time. So just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am Yasmin Angoe. I'm the writer of thriller and suspense novels. My first book that came out in 2021 was Her Name is Night. And that was the first of the Nina Night trilogy, which I finished. And now I have this new one, the standalone, more psychological suspense, whereas the Nina Nights were action thrillers. So this one is more psychological suspense. And I am a former English teacher of middle and high school, and now I write full time and do some freelance developmental editing on the side too, when I'm not writing or raising family.
Right. In all of your spare time, then you
Yes.
yes.
Because
And
we
you
as parents have so much spare time, right?
exactly. And you were mentioning before we started recording that you're running around with lots of family, but just kind of taking care of things. So that there's always something, right?
Always.
Yes, all the multiple hats that you get to wear when you are a parent. So the book is Not What She Seems. You've mentioned that it's more of a psychological thriller. So yes, I love the
Mhm.
cover.
Thank you.
Give an overview.
Oh yes, so sure. So Not What She Seems is about Jack Brodie. She is a young woman who has basically self-exiled herself from her small town of Brook Haven because everyone believes that, and she also believes that she took a part of her father, her beloved father's, and who was also the town sheriff's death some years back. She thinks that she's the cause of it, and they all do too. So they kind of ostracize her. She leaves. Um, but she has to come back after 6 years because one of her family members ends up in the hospital. And so she's dealing with having to come back and deal with all of the people who, think she's a certain kind of way and really didn't want her back, think she's like a bad girl. And when she comes back, she realizes, or she meets the newest town member who is a very wealthy woman who has become the town's benefactor, and everyone adores her. But Jack thinks that there's just something about Faye Arden that isn't quite what she seems to be. So that's what the book is about, is who is this person? Who are all of these people? And they're not what they seem.
Yes, you actually segued for me because you said who are all these people? Because the book is Not What She Seems, but there's multiple she's that could apply to you when you start getting into things. Did you start out with that title and kind of work from there, or did the title come to you as you were writing all these characters?
No, the title came from my editor. I can't even tell you what what the title of this book was because I have such bad titles that I come up with, and it's only literally what the book is. So it might be like Exile Girl, and that's how I know that this is the title. So I mean, even with the book that I am editing now, they were like, "What titles do you want for it?" And I'm like, "I don't even know why you all keep asking me this. This is like number five. We know the drill. I don't, know that stuff." So yeah, this came from my editor, my editing team. So thanks to them.
So you're saying that the play on words with all the night titles, that was not you?
Oh, well, that was not my genius, right? So that
You
I
just start
think
lying.
I
Just
should,
claim it.
right? The title of the night books was literally Assassin. That's what it was. And it was in my mother's native language. So they were like, well, if people are gonna have trouble pronouncing that, and let's give it like a different title. And so between my editor Mega and my agent Melissa, they actually came up with her name is Night. And then we, went off of that. So yep. That's
Nice.
how that came.
What is assassin in that language?
It's Amuela.
Oh,
And
oh,
yeah, and that's in Tree, so from Ghana. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
kind of like it, but yeah, I think people would be a little probably not sure.
Oh, right,
Um,
right, right.
you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we do.
Yeah.
As someone who, as you know, massively overthinks naming anything from pets to sourdough starter, I actually really appreciate Yasmin's simplicity, the simplicity of the way she names the books. I can relate to that, and I like it. I like it. I do like the name of the of assassin in her mother's native tongue. I think that's really cool. I think that people would not know how to say it if they saw it, or just kind of pass over it because it's a word they didn't recognize. So that sucks because we do, as I said, judge books by their cover and their title. But I like it. Not that I have any say in anything, except I do have a say in the fact that we're going to our first break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the inspiration behind Not What She Seems. You are tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Yasmin Angoe. As we get into this second segment, just your second and your final reminder about supporting the podcast in a monetary fashion. If you choose to do so, you can go to gsmcpodcast.info. Again, you can leave a tip or a donation, a question or a comment. All support is greatly appreciated, no matter what form that support takes. But if this is something that you're interested in doing, gsmcpodcast.info. And thank you, as always, for any past, present, or future support. Before the break, we were talking about naming books, and I like the process of how Yasmin names books, even if her editors maybe aren't as impressed. I support it. But let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Yasmin. So, what was your initial jumping off point for Jack's story?
Yeah, let's see. So I live in a small town. Well, no, that's not true. I live in South Carolina. and I live in one of the bigger, so I live in the capital, Columbia,
Hmm.
but we're surrounded by a whole bunch of small towns, right? So we, even though it's South Carolina, where I am is more uh urban or modern. I don't want to say modern because everyone's modern, but you know what I mean. It's not as rural
Yeah.
as other parts of South Carolina. But like as soon as you leave out of the central area, you are going through towns that maybe have 400 or 500 people, and they're so small and they're so close knit. And even here and where we are, everyone knows each other. They've known each other since birth, and they are, and they know each other when they die. You know what I mean? So I really wanted, that was an inspiration. I loved how everyone knows each other, but then I also was wondering, like, that's also a bad thing. Like, if everyone knows each other, then everyone like has expectations of you. Like, you basically have no privacy because
Mhm.
everyone knows you, your mother, and everything about you. Whereas where I was born in Northern Virginia, it's so much, there's so much mix and everyone is like in and out. And so like it's very rare unless you're in one of those bigger, smaller towns that you will still be with the people that you grew up with. So yeah, so that's kind of what inspired me. And then just be seeing these small towns and just wondering, like, is this person really like this,
Mhm.
when they are by themselves? Because Southern people are known to, for Southern hospitality, and they're so sweet and they have the nice, pretty accent and everything like that. But sometimes if you get on their wrong side, they can be vicious. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what inspired me. I was like, these nice people are kind of vicious when they want to be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and they'll cover it up with a nice bless your heart. Like,
Right, right. You have to bless your heart and you have to say, it
yes.
took me a while before I realized that that wasn't a nice thing that
That's
they were
not, no.
saying when they said it to me. So yeah,
No.
I
Um,
learned that real quick.
yeah. Couple of things about small towns. I mean, I grew up in a very small rural town, so I get it. You can't get away from what people have already like. Jack is often the wild Brodie girl, and that's just how people see her. So you either embrace it or you fight against it, and she's kind of
Exactly.
trying to do both in the
Exactly. That's it. Perfect, Sarah. Yeah. Like she does both. Like she wants to embrace it and she pretends like she's fine with it, but really inside, like she's not, because who wants to be misunderstood and, misrepresented all the time? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other aspect of this is that it is a small town. And so when you meet Faye and she's just been brought in and embraced, my first small town instinct is nobody gets that welcome in a small town that quickly.
Right,
What
right,
is
right.
she, what does she know? What,
Right. Well,
um,
she knows money, right? So,
yeah,
so that's what got the town, and she's also engaged to like someone who's pretty high up in the town, a government official. So they kind of vouch for her, but because she's put so much, and she knows the game, so she's put so much money into restoring this the what was formerly called Murder Manor, because it has such a sinister background, and she's restoring it to this really nice bed and breakfast. And so the town really wants that because they don't want to be known for this build this, mansion that has had so much death in it. So that's why they welcome. That's why they may have those suspicions, like, now who really is this person? But money, kind of covers all things. And the idea of pretending with the pretenses, like this is a wonderful town that has no sinister past,
yeah.
that kind of like will erase all of that stuff that they're not sure about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
First of all, I love that the townsfolk call it Murder Manor, and then I also love there's a scene where Jack is talking to someone in the town, and she's like, "Wow, this woman also knows that we called it Murder Manor," and I think everyone knows you call it Murder Manor. It's a small town, but
It's a small
uh,
town, right?
was that did that kind of just evolve as you were writing because it's a very unique backstory for this place.
It is, it is. Yeah, I really had fun with that. And I wish, I hope that at some point my editor will let me like kind of do a prequel of Murder Manor because I
Hmm.
just fell in love with it. And I think that it could be like a great horror, the backstory, right? And that was just something I wanted to do a play of, so South Carolina has a lot of plantations,
Hmm.
that's around it. And I wanted to have a plantation-like building, a property, but I
Hmm.
didn't want to make it a plantation because, you see that a lot and you expect that, I guess, when you have a Southern story.
Yeah.
So I, changed, well, there's no real place like this that I know of around here, but like I just changed and made it so that it's not a plantation with that kind of history, but it has ties to way back in the past. And like, it's more of a medical facility with all of these things that have happened there. And so I thought that that was really interesting. And the idea of the caretaker, not to give too much away, like that kind of came from a story that I had heard on the news one day about like an old folk tale from one of these towns. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. And so I just kind of took that story and spun it a different way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Um, let's go back to talking about Jack a little bit. What about her as the protagonist is going to resonate, do you think?
Well, I think so. I wrote Jack so that she could be very annoying to people. I don't know if everyone remembers how they were in their 20s. And we just made, or at least I did, made all the wrong decisions, and I just thought
Mhm.
I knew everything. And I was really, very reactionary to things. And so I wanted that kind of arc for her. And so for people, especially if you're someone who's older and who's had some experiences, you're like, oh my gosh, you know that she shouldn't be doing these things, she shouldn't be playing her hand this way, but she has to learn. And so you get that annoyance with her, but then you also can relate to having that kind of mentality back then until you finally learn, until you finally get it that this is how I have to deal with certain people, or this is how I have to be for myself. This is how I want to embrace myself. And I think that's what I've heard from readers is that, they really appreciated being annoyed with her, but then finally getting, well, when she finally gets it, right? And then also being misunderstood and misrepresented and having people make assumptions about you just because you might have done something or said something, but that's not really you. So yeah, so that's pretty much what resonated with them.
Yeah. I appreciate the way you introduced Jack because we get introduced to Jack at the beginning in this sort of very reactive way. She encounters a situation. It's not a good situation, but she jumps in both feet with just, I'm gonna kind of blow this situation up, and she does.
Right. Yes, and you're just like, why, oh, why? And then she doesn't, she's like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but it was way too late now. So,
Right.
and
But it
then she
actually,
goes
and
home
it
and
makes her
doesn't want to tell her mother, right? So how many times have we done that?
exactly, exactly. And it blows it up so that, but it kind of starts that ball rolling because maybe I shouldn't have done that. Oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have done the 6 steps that actually led up to this. And it kind of gets her thinking about really actions have consequences. I mentioned at the beginning that Jack makes some questionable, maybe interesting choices, and we've just seen a little bit of that. Actions have consequences. She learns this, and she starts to learn that maybe only thinking in a certain way or only thinking without taking others into consideration. She's not exactly selfish, but she does what she does a lot to protect herself, but a lot to protect her family. But sometimes it can be selfish. There's a lot of complicated soupiness about her emotions, as there are with all of our emotions, right? So it's presented very well. We get a really good picture of the complexity of Jack's emotions, and for good reason, because she's got a lot of things that have led up to this point in her life that has made her make choices, or that have led to the choices that she's currently making that are then having consequences throughout this book. But we're going to go ahead and take our next break of this podcast. When we come back, Yasmin will be talking about some of the research that she did for the book. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with Yasmin Angoe. Before the break, we were talking about the protagonist of Not What She Seems, Jack, and the complexity of some of Jack's choices and the way we're introduced to her as a character, etc. But let's go ahead now and return to the conversation with Yasmin. Did you do any particular research for the story?
Yeah, so I did some actual on-site research going to some of the plantations so that I can kind of figure out how I wanted to structure Murder Manor or Moor Manor as it's supposed to be called. And I did some like Citizens Academy with our local sheriff's department just so I can get a feel of, how a sheriff's department runs and how the cops are and, when someone is arrested, how they might feel. Not that I didn't get arrested for research or anything like that, but
oh, come on.
yeah, so yeah. So that's the kind of research. It depends on what I'm gonna have the characters and the protagonist especially deal with in the story. So like with Nina Knight, because she was an assassin, I had to talk to some of my law enforcement friends about like guns and like what kind of weaponry and how would she, do this or how would she have that? So, that's what I researched. And then also a lot of like international things in terms of how the tribe was structured, right?
Yeah.
And then with this book, like I said, I researched, the actual plantations for structure and then the sheriff's department. And then I even asked like my own doctors when it came to her sister. And the medical things that, were happening with her grandfather. I asked my own doctors, like, how long would somebody be in residency by this age and, all that stuff so that it could be more realistic, even in how her grandfather was hurt. I asked, my doctor, can this be this way? Can this happen? Because I want this person to be hurt this way.
Yeah,
And we had a long conversation about how that could possibly happen. So like that. And I, give my doctors some thanks in the back because they spent a little extra time with me to answer those questions. So I appreciate them.
Yeah, that's great. There is a fine line between author and sociopath because the sentence you just said, I want this person to be hurt like this. And we as readers are like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. It's completely acceptable.
Right. Like, yeah, and that's how I'm like, I need somebody to die like this. I need somebody. And then, and luckily people know now why I might be asking that. But like before, I had to keep that to myself and just, ask the internet like how I might do something before like, people are like, okay, so she's just not trying to like kill me or anything. But yeah.
Or you just never know. You can keep them guessing.
Don't make me mad is what I tell them.
That's right. That's right. There are themes throughout this book of guilt, redemption, along those lines. Did you include those because it was a suspense / thriller? Was that was that a catch-22 or was that just how the process worked?
Yeah, I think for me it's the process because even with my former books, when you get books like that, when they're action thrillers, it's very actiony and you don't have, I'm not going to say you don't, but I sometimes don't see like the depth of what that character really may be going through and then the other phases of family and, and how they deal with that and all of these different adversities that they encounter. And so I'm really into family and how people deal with certain situations from their perspective, and even misunderstandings and misrepresentations within family, right? So when I was thinking about this story and I knew what the external, problem was going to be, and I knew that, Jack was going to be this person who's self-exiled. Well, why is she like that? And how does something like that, when people put labels on you and label you the wild, Brodie girl, when, that's not what you are, how does that play into how you are as an adult? And how do you maybe pull yourself up from that? So, and then even like her interactions between her and her mother and her and her sister. So I really try to like kind of feed those things in to a thriller, because I feel like that has to have, so that might be like a little, what do they call it, like women's fiction or contemporary fiction now? But like I like to have that personal growth within the story as well as, killing people.
Yes. Sure. Yes. This is really random, but it just popped into my head. So Jack's sister Pen is taller than she is. Has nothing to do with anything except for the fact that my mom's younger sister is taller than she is by several inches. And so I, as the younger sister, was convinced that I was going to grow up and be taller than my older sister. This is just how it works. This is how life goes. The younger sister grows up to be taller. And so I'm a little jealous of Pen that she got to live my, growing up and being tall dream.
Pen is everything that probably an older sister should be, but like, she's the younger sister. So yeah. I too wish that, well, I'm the older sister. So, and my younger sisters are probably a little bit taller than me, but I too wish that I had a little bit of height to me. So I also envy Pen and how wonderfully she's grown.
Yes, in more ways than one, right? Yeah, she definitely has a little bit more together than Jack does, but it's good because they have each other and they kind of balance each other in that family way.
And I thought it was fun to kind of like flip it. Everyone has, thinks that the older sibling should be, the one that should guide the rest. And so when the younger sibling is the more responsible one, and the one who toes the line, it's really like, okay, so which one is the older? And they even have that, joke between themselves, like I'm the, the big little sister or whatever the case is. So yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Well, my sister and I are the exact same height, so we didn't.
Are you?
Yep. We didn't. And we're the exact same height as our mom. So we all just topped out right there.
Oh, wow. It's just the three of you. Okay.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Anyway, you mentioned editing. So what are you currently working on?
Yeah, so I am currently in developmental. I just turned in my fifth book maybe like 4 weeks ago or something, and so they just sent it back to me with and that one is mainly about a woman whose best friend comes up missing, and so she goes kind of like on a quest to find out what happened to this friend. She just totally like disappeared, and she thinks that it's this big prominent family that has something to do with it. So she has to go and kind of come up against, it's like a David and Goliath kind of thing, come up against them and really find out like what really happened to her friend. And so like that was interesting and fun kind of writing that, and definitely dealing with secrets and within one family and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I'm currently editing right now.
Okay. And that's a standalone?
And that's a standalone, yeah.
Family secrets, I think, are always good content for novels, especially when they're other people's family secrets, and maybe even especially when they are fictional family secrets, right? But I am looking forward to the new book, maybe speaking with Yasmin again. But we are going to take our final break of this podcast. When we come back, we will be talking about writing standalone versus writing a series. You are tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review podcast. Before the break, Yasmin was talking about her next book that is coming out. I think she said this one's currently in edits. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and return now to the conversation with Yasmin. So you've written 2 standalones now, and then the Nina Knight series was 3 books. So challenges or things that you appreciate about writing standalone versus trilogy or series?
Yeah, like when I'm writing standalone, I like the new and different characters. They and their different stories. I don't have to remember what I might have written in book 1 for book 3 to make sure but then that's where the editors come and they kind of remember for me. But yeah, so it's like a palate cleanser. It's something new and fresh for me. But then I also enjoy writing trilogies because you really get grounded in those, in that world and with those characters, and you get to know them really well, and you get to really go into more depth with them than you can, in a standalone. So there are pros and cons to writing both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
More toward the beginning, we mentioned all of that free time that you have in your life. When you do have that free time and you get to read for yourself, what have you been up to? What have you been reading?
Yeah, so I just finished reading A Crane Among Wolves by June Her, which was really good. And then I finished reading the last one by Rachel Housel Hall, which is more of a fantasy or romantasy, I think. And then I'm currently reading Cartographers by Pang Shepard, and so that one's pretty good too. So yeah, so those are the 3 that I've recently read and am reading currently.
Do you have reading goals for the year, or do you just kind of you read what you read?
I read what I read, and I read across, genres, and no reading goals because I don't need to put any more goals or things on me than I already have. I have to do deadlines, and I'm like, that's the only goals that I want to ever impose upon myself. So yeah, I just read whatever. And if I read a bunch, then that's great. I typically tend to listen to probably audiobooks because then it allows me to, do other things, but then it also feels like a breather from, having pages in front of me, and it doesn't feel as much like work when I'm like listening to a story being told to me.
Yeah. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, your books are audiobooks as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Internet. So if people want to know more about you and the books, website, and any social media that you're active on.
Sure. So on my website is yasminangoe.com. And I'm on Threads and IG. You can find me. It's at author_Yasmin Angoe. And then Blue Sky, I'm kind of like learning it. That's interesting. And then that's at, Yasmin Angoe Blue Sky Social, however that whole handle
So
goes. I don't
long.
know. It is, right? Like I was
Yes.
like, how do we say that? Like,
Yeah.
So just put my name in the search, you'll find me.
Right. Yeah. I'm also new to it. And every time I try to type in someone's username, I'm like, do I have to put the whole thing? Yeah. Anyway, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you highlighted during our time?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I'm also working on a YA, so I'm taking a little dabble into that. And so that was just announced that I have a YA. It's a horror one, so it's a vampire YA set in South Carolina. It's called She Drinks the Light, and that should be out maybe early next year. So I'm in edits for both of those books at the same time. So pray for me.
I will. Vampires in the South is always, I don't know why it's fascinating to me. I guess there's that lore in New Orleans, but for some reason, vampires in the South, it just seems too warm for vampires. Like, I don't know. I feel like they should be somewhere.
These are vampires that like the warmth.
I don't know. That's just my own weirdness. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right, though. You're right. Yeah. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Southern Gothic or something. I don't know. Well, on that random note, thank you so much for taking the time to come back and talk to me about writing and Not What She Seems. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love coming here. So hopefully I can come back again.
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking to you. Thank you again to Yasmin for joining me for another conversation, this time about her standalone novel. I find her delightful to talk to and enjoy when she comes on the podcast. So thank you, Yasmin, for sharing your thoughts about writing Not What She Seems. If you are a fan of suspense, a little bit of thriller, not a lot of like eek or ick factor, really low on the eek and ick factors, just a lot of twists and turns and secrets and relationships and layers with things that you may expect, may not expect, but there's just a lot going on here in terms of things you might see coming, things you might not see coming, but people are people, and these are people that make choices, and they affect the outcome of the book. They affect a lot in the book, and there's some directions that I wasn't expecting, even though maybe I should have, but maybe not. I don't know. You will have to be the judge. But if you are a fan of suspense, then definitely check this one out. If you're a fan of more action-oriented, then you might want to check out the Nina Knight trilogy that is complete. All 3 books are out, so you can have some action and get to know a really fun main character who has a character arc. I came in at the end, but it was good to hear about where she started and where I got to see her end up at in those 3 novels. So definitely check out Yasmin's work, and or if not for you, then maybe someone you know you want to get them a gift. Hey, we're coming up on Valentine's Day. Last minute gifts are always good. Books are always good. If you want to give someone, a book lover, a Valentine's Day present, get them a book. So I'm always happy to throw out random book gift suggestions. Not random in this case, but you know what I mean. Random gifts as random books. Random gifts. Never mind. You know what? Not gonna try to finish that sentence. I think any gift giving opportunity, or not even a gift giving opportunity, there's no wrong reason to give a book. Let me put it that way. Go out and buy a book. Go out and check out Yasmin's books. And maybe join me next week for another returning author. Apparently February is returning author month because I have the 3rd in a row of returning authors. Next week I will be speaking once again with Michael J. Cooper. We will be talking about the book you see next to me. This is the 2nd in the series that is, it's a series not about World War II, which we've talked a lot about, a lot of historical fiction. This one's World War I and the lead up to World War I, and a lot of some of the lead up to World War I, some of the action of World War I, but some of the action in a part of the world that you might not always think of when you think of World War I, and that is the Middle East. There's a lot of different threads that run throughout this story, so I am excited to have Michael back on the podcast to talk about the 2nd of this book, and I hope that you will join me for that conversation. In the meantime, as always, if you are a fan of this podcast, and if you've made it this far, I hope you're a fan of this podcast. Maybe this is your first episode. Maybe you're a long-time listener/watcher, depending on which format you prefer. But please do like, follow, and subscribe. Again, that really helps the algorithm. Something else that helps the algorithm is to leave a positive review. That is incredibly helpful. It's helpful for me and the podcast. It is helpful for the authors that you read. Review, if that is something that you are of a mind to do. Don't be like me, don't overthink it. It can be very simple, but a positive review really does help. If you want to follow the podcast on social media, you can do so on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Please do find the podcast, follow the podcast, and engage in questions. Again, I love to hear from readers, so tell me what you're reading, ask me questions if you have them, and I'm happy to engage. So I hope you're having a good week so far. I hope that your week doesn't feel like it's been many weeks long as my friends did, and as mine sort of has, but hope that it is going well. Whatever your week, though, is throwing at you, I do hope that it gives you plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to